The state of Wisconsin is full of cheesemakers, and the Carr Valley Cheese Company has a plant just a few miles outside of the Dells, where you can actually see how the cheese is made. We hooked up with Jim Albers to get Cheese Lesson 101.
The milk is pasteurized, run into vat at about 87 degrees.
Is that why it's so hot in here?
Yes, it's and plus we have a lot of steam running. We have to warm the vats eventually up to 100 degrees.
Okay.
So we're running a lot of steam in here.
As a layman, I would think it would be cold in a cheese factory. Not true.
No,
Okay.
not true at all. It's really hot work. Cheese is cooled after we're done with it.
Okay.
But in the process of making cheese is a pretty warm process.
It's a warm process. Okay, so you bring this whole milk in,
Yes.
and you put it in these vats.
That's right.
And then what do we do?
We add a culture of bacteria, and we give that about an hour to work, and then after that we add.
What does that bacteria, that culture actually do?
Well, it creates an acid in the cheese. It creates flavor in the cheese, but the acid also helps preserve the milk.
Wait a minute. I know from grade school that before refrigeration, people had to use a lot of different methods to keep food, to preserve it so it'd be safe to eat a few months down the road. That's why we've still got smoked meats and salted fish and pickled vegetables. But what's he getting at when he says the acid helps to preserve the milk?
Cheese making is kind of a food preservative process, and there's two things that help preserve the cheese, and that's the acid in the cheese, and it's the salt that we add also.
So, like the kid who wants to learn faster than the teacher can teach, I assume the bacteria did something else too. And the milk basically starts to solidify because of that bacteria?
No, that's another ingredient.
Another step. Okay, tell me about that.
That comes about an hour later. We add a coagulant, and then it gives it about 25 to 30 minutes to, it kind of becomes like a jelly. After that, we take some tools called a harp. We cut through this jelly. By cutting through the gelled milk and bacteria mixture, it allows the whey to separate from the curd. And, of course, we all remember what those two are, right? The curd is your actual cheese, and then the whey is the liquid that isn't used in the cheese making process. Okay. And it still has a lot of sugars and proteins and so forth in it. And just like manufacturing any product, nothing goes to waste. The whey gets sent off for other uses. It's just done in the cheese making process. Something that becomes really obvious when you're inside a cheese making plant is the amount of chemistry that goes into the cheese formulas and quality control. Jim's always checking samples and keeping track of times. He said that's really important because the type of cheese you end up with is determined by the old world formulas of time and temperature. The temperature has a lot to do with the type of cheese we produce. Here we're producing curd, so we warm it up to 100 degrees. Other cheeses, some we warm up and cool down coldly. We'd warm it up to 100, 102, and we cool it back down to, let's say, 85 degrees, and in the process it slows down the bacteria and you get a milder cheese. Can I eat one of those right out of there? Oh, sure. I don't want to reach in with my hands. Can you? It's absolutely freshest curd. A cheese curd, as fresh as it can be. Yeah. Jim went on to show us how they weigh the curds and put it into forms, then how they press the forms all lined up against each other to remove the excess moisture and to reshape the curds into the shapes we see in the stores. We even got to see how they cover some of the blocks in that hard colored wax. It was a great tour and made me hungry for more. When I checked out the cheese selection in the coolers, I went right back to those loose curds that Jim had given me inside the plant. There's nothing like Wisconsin cheese curds right from the factory. Here's some advice when you visit the Dells area. Learn how to drive in circles. They're starting to replace some of their busier intersections with roundabouts. Now, roundabouts are pretty popular in Europe and even in a few US cities, and they're known to reduce accidents.
But for a lot of us, it's a new concept. Just remember to yield to the vehicles from your left and you'll be fine. Oh, and remember which exit is yours, or you could be going in circles forever and ever and ever. As I was headed back into town from the cheese factory, I spotted a sign for the Mid-Continent Railway Museum. Maybe that's where they invented all those roller coasters in the Dells. I pulled into the little town in North Freedom, only to find out it's like something out of an old movie. A real small-town train station and railroad cars from a time before airplanes, before the internet, or even roller coasters. Bob Risto, one of the volunteers, explained what's here for visitors to explore.
We have probably 30 pieces of freight equipment, such as the caboose, representative of older freight equipment, and we probably have about 50 older cars that are passenger cars, or coaches and combines and things of that sort.
If you're a kid that enjoys trains, or a guy like me that enjoys trains, or maybe somebody that just fell in love with the show Petticoat Junction, this is it right here. I mean, this is Petticoat Junction.
Well, without the girls.
Yeah, right. No girls in the water tank?
Right.
They've got everything necessary to take you back in time, back to another era in transportation, like the authentic railway station.
This actually looks like it at one time was a railway station. Is that true?
The railway station, the depot was a railroad station on the Chicago Northwestern at what is now Rock Springs, Wisconsin, about 8 miles northwest here by the crow flies. And the building was given to us back in 1962, and we moved the building here to North Freedom.
When you step inside, you feel like you're stepping back in time 100 years or so. The pot-bellied stove heating the waiting room, the stiff wooden benches, the high-tech communications equipment to communicate with other stations along the line. Everything here has been restored, or it's on a wish list to be restored. This is a non-profit, after all, run by volunteers.
Some of the cars were actually chicken coops on farms and things of that sort that we resurrected, brought back.
And look what they do with these rolling pieces of history. This particular car took thousands of hours to restore, but look at it now. I don't know what could make this stop any better. Well, maybe one thing. To ride on one of the working trains with the engineer? Wow! The museum gives regularly scheduled train rides on a line that used to be used by the Chicago and Northwestern. Along the way, Rusty, the engineer, explained everything. How the controls work, how to blow the whistle, and most importantly, what to look out for when you're the man in control. Just to make my railroad experience complete, on the way back to the depot, I got to ride in the passenger cars and the caboose. What a great adventure. It's really interesting to discover all the great things to do in the Wisconsin Dells area besides amusement parks and water slides. With all the development in this area, it's hard to believe that the father of wildlife management and land conservation, Aldo Leopold, did much of his work right here. At the Leopold Center, you can learn how Leopold's ideas and teachings affect us today. And just down the road is the Leopold Shack. Originally a chicken coop, it's where he and his family spent weekends and vacations connecting with nature. It's also where they put his conservationist ideas into action by planting 30,000 pine trees on land that Leopold described as a dust farm, overworked and under-respected land. Today, many of those 30,000 trees still stand as a testament to Aldo Leopold's teachings. And what's this? The International Crane Foundation in the middle of Wisconsin? Oh, we've got to make a stop there.
Are cranes indigenous to this area at all?
Well, we have sandhill cranes and whooping cranes in North America.
From what Kate says, all around the world there's only a small number of crane species. And two dedicated researchers, Ron Sowie and George Archibald, decided to dedicate their lives and this piece of Sowie family land to preserving the beautiful birds.
We're the only place in the world that has all
Okay.
15 crane species for people to
Okay.
see. We are almost like a zoo. We're AZA, accredited associations of aquariums and zoos. And we are just dedicated to saving cranes and their habitats that they depend on, which are wetlands and grasslands.
There's a critic in every crowd. And to think, all this right on the outskirts of the Dells.
When you pull into Wisconsin Dells, the sign says Water Park Capital of the World. It needs to say plus, 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 plus. There's so much more to see and do here. Hey, it's time for me to hit the road. Till next time, I'm Jim Barnett. Gotta go.
If you have a destination idea for Jim, or you want to check out other episodes of Jim Barnett's Gotta Go, head to jimbarnett.tv.
I love to travel, but there's no place like home. Hello, Peoria.